Welcome to the Call to Worship podcast, where we look at all 188 Bible verses about worship. I'm your host, Craig Michael Davis, and I want to invite you to join me on my journey of worshiping God daily for 1 year. Over the next year, we'll look at all 188 Bible verses on worship. And I promise you that if you stick with me on this journey, God will radically transform your life. Today we look at Genesis 24:48, which says, "Then I bowed my head and worshipped the Lord and blessed the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who had led me by the right way to take the daughter of my master's kinsman for his son." This verse captures the beautiful moment of worship and gratitude. To understand its significance, let's look at the context. In Genesis 24, we follow Eliezer, Abraham's servant, who is on a mission to find a wife for Isaac. After praying for a sign and witnessing Rebekah's gracious response, Eliezer realizes that God has directed his journey. In verse 48, we reflect on this divine guidance. Eliezer's act of worship is deeply intertwined with his recognition of God's guidance. His bowing his head and praising God is not just an act of respect, but an expression of deep gratitude for God's direction and faithfulness. See, worship, as illustrated here, is more than just a ritual. It's a heartfelt response to God's involvement in our lives. Eliezer's worship reflects his acknowledgement of God's hand in orchestrating his mission successfully. His gratitude and praise are an overflow of his recognition that everything came together according to God's plan. Now, looking through this passage, I've got 3 R's for you. Number 1 is realizing the work God is giving you. Number 2 is relying on God's timing. And number 3 is rejoicing in God's provision. Let's look at number 1, realizing the work God is giving you. Eliezer is given a task from Abraham to find a wife for Isaac, Abraham's son. This is a pretty significant task. Remember earlier in Genesis, God blessed Abraham and promised to make him a great nation with many descendants. Then later on in Genesis, God asked Abraham to sacrifice his son, literally killing him on an altar as a test to see if Abraham really trusted the Lord and his promises. We see from Eliezer's faithfulness that whether our work comes from a boss at work or a parent at home, God is the one ordaining our work behind the scenes. Genesis 24:13-14 says, "Behold, I am standing by the spring of water, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. Let the young women," this is Eliezer talking, "let the young woman to whom I shall say, please let down your jar that I may drink, and whom says, drink, and I will water your camels, let her be the one whom you have appointed for your servant Isaac. By this I shall know that you have shown steadfast love to my master." This is Eliezer talking to God. So, what is the work that God has given you to do? Do you know what it is? And are you doing it? Now, let's look at relying on God's timing. God's timing is a masterpiece of divine wisdom, unfolding in perfect harmony with the grand design of his creation. It is the gentle assurance that every moment is infused with purpose, even when it feels uncertain or delayed. In the tapestry of life, each thread, blade of grass, or crumb for wild birds is meticulously placed by the loving Creator who sees beyond our immediate horizon. Trusting in God's timing means embracing the belief that his plans are not bound by our clocks. Let me say that again. Trusting in God's timing means embracing the belief that his plans are not bound by our clocks or even our desires, but they're crafted for our ultimate good and his ultimate glory. It is in waiting patiently and surrendering to his perfect rhythm that we discover the profound beauty of his timing. And he orchestrates every season of our lives with unparalleled grace and intention. See, remember, Abraham waited 100 years before he had Isaac. You may be in a season of waiting right now where you feel God is distant. You may even feel like God has forgotten about you. But in times like these, remember that God will always see his promises through. Just like he promised Abraham, God has a special purpose for you. He created you for a specific reason, for specific tasks that only you can accomplish. And finally, let's look at rejoicing in God's provision. Genesis 24:48 challenges us to see worship as a response to God's guidance and provision. It's a call to be attentive to how God leads us and to respond with heartfelt praise and gratitude. Eliezer asked God for a specific sign that would confirm to him the woman that God had already chosen for Isaac. He didn't look around on his own accord and choose a wife for Isaac based on his own feelings or expectations. Boy, if only we had faith like Eliezer, we would avoid so many trials and heartache that come from acting on our own or out of our own selfish desires. So take some time this week to evaluate God's provision in your life. Just like a manager would take inventory of the groceries or the merchandise in a store, I want you to write down some of the ways in which God has provided for you over the years. Then fill in the response question in your devotional. Why is worship important in the life of a believer? Like always, make sure to find a quiet place to worship God on your own today. Once you're done, make sure to fill in a bubble on your 366-day of worship habit tracker on the first page of your devotional. If you still need a copy of Call to Worship, I'll leave a link in the description so you can pick up a copy today and join me in my 1-year journey of worshiping God daily.